MidAmericaBroadcasting.com, MAB Weekly, as we shift gears to Region Sportsdesk Semi-State Week preview, picks, yada, yada, yada. Hope everyone is having a wonderful week. Of course, we are live right now on Wednesday night here at MidAmericaBroadcasting.com. Video, of course, will be up sometime on Thursday. So we'll be having that going on as well. Don't forget, you want to interact with us during the course live. You can do so via the Mid-America page on Facebook at MidAmericaBroadcasting.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at MAB Sports. Of course, JT has his Facebook pages as well, which is...
Region Sports Desk.
If you don't know by now.
Yeah, it's... I have a new likes page. It's not just the normal friended page. There's two different pages, but there's one that you have to like, and that's the one that I'm going to focus my attention on mainly because there's more room to grow with that page. There's not. I can have.
You don't have the ceiling.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what happened with the other page. I've just reached that ceiling, so yeah, that's what I plan to do with that.
Well, before we take a look at this weekend's games, classes 1 through 5. Our game away from the state finals. The 6A championship game is already set. Carmel and Warren Central will have an extra week to prepare for each other, as it'll be the Metropolitan Conference Bowl next Saturday night at Lucas Oil Stadium. But JT, you and I were at Pete Brzezinski Field last week for the 4A Regional Championship game as East Chicago took on New Prairie. And wow, look at that right here.
Oh, my.
And, oh boy. Don't you just love stuff on the fly? Oh boy.
I gotta clean this.
That was thrown just like a Griffith quarterback, folks. I'll tell you that right now. And JT has hands like a Griffith wide receiver as well.
That's not funny.
No. And he's walking right in front of the camera, and he doesn't care anymore. You gotta love it. But anyhow, we had the New Prairie Cougars and the East Chicago Central Cardinals last Friday night. And I'll be honest with you, what a thrilling game. I cannot remember a game that had so many momentum-changing plays, many highs and lows on both sides of the ball, both sides of the field. For 4 quarters, and probably the most epic last 2 minutes of regulation I have seen in quite some time. East Chicago with a play that I still can't believe Carlos Fernandez wrapped up and somehow getting out and finding Traquan Burnett all alone, no Cougar within 15 yards of him. He ends up going for a 64-yard catch and run.
Sorry about that.
But then New Prairie ends up finding a way to get, to tie the game. He did not even throw a pass the entire game. They get a 40-yard completion on the play after the Burnett touchdown. And then of all the times to attempt their first field goal, Colin Samansky ties it up on pretty much the last play of regulation. There was a second left. And but East Chicago was able to win in overtime as New Prairie missed their extra point. East Chicago made theirs, and just an absolutely incredible atmosphere. Last Friday night, I think Tommy Boy's out there listening, and he was at the game as well. But just an incredible game last Friday night, and it's definitely going to go down as far as Northwest Indiana playoff history, and a reason. If you're listening right now, why I've been stretching it, you'll see on the video what happened. But I've been stretching. That's what we call it in the business. But in Northwest Indiana history, it's going to go down as one of the all-time great playoff games.
Yeah, but I would have to agree with you. That the atmosphere there was amazing. There was probably at least 4,000 or 5,000 people there. I would have to guess. Both sides completely packed. The fence lines were just it was just lined up all the way around. And as you mentioned, there were just so many momentum changes in the game. It looked like early in the second quarter, once New Prairie built that 2-touchdown lead,
21-6.
I thought, wow, this game's going to get ugly. I really believed that. It really looked like New Prairie was going to run away with it. But you got to give the Cardinals some credit. They were able to, get a few big plays that go their way, and then finally were able to kind of chip into the lead and I think some of the players on the New Prairie side started to get a little bit nervous because you know what? They hadn't really been in that situation all season long. They've been the front runner. They haven't, not one game have they had, finish in single digits. They've won every game by at least 2 or 3 touchdowns, if not more. And so now that they were in that situation where the game tightened up, you saw them put the ball on the ground a couple of times. And boy, you got to give Fernandez, the quarterback for East Chicago, some credit on that last drive where they were able to score the go-ahead touchdown. He had a swarm of defenders who were just it looked like he was going to get sacked 3 or 4 different times. Gets that pass off, and Burnett just streaks to the end zone about 50 yards, and boom, there you go. Go to overtime, and it just comes down to a missed extra point. But I tell you what, East Chicago, give them a lot of credit. They never backed down. They didn't fold when the pressure got hot, and now they're 1 game away from a state championship.
Who would have thought it, huh? Who would have
Not
thought
many. I think that one thing that I posted after the game, I think really it's got to solidify Stacey Adams as head coach of the year in Northwest Indiana, because I don't think anybody could have imagined that East Chicago was going to go quite as far as they have. Even if Andrean goes on and wins the state championship, we all knew Andrean was going to be great. Nobody knew East Chicago was really capable of doing what they've done here in the postseason. It's been incredible.
All right, we're ready to look ahead to this week?
I think so.
All right, we get in Class 1A. The 1A Northern Semi-State for the second time ever. There will be a semi-state championship game played at Winnebago High School as the undefeated 13-0 Winnebago Warriors will be hosting 12-1 Tri-Central, team that I believe has not been in this position before. Tri-Central has done a very solid job all year, coming in 12-1. Longtime coach George Gilbert, longtime coach over at Clinton Central for a number of years. He has now taken the Tri-Central program to new heights, 12-1. Probably their signature win on the season was knocking off Sheridan during the course of the playoffs last week. It was a 28-7 win over South Adams. They lost their opening game of the year to Eastern Hancock, who's still alive down south. We'll get to them very shortly, but that was a 47-35 loss for the Trojans. They have since won 12 games in a row. And let's see if I can bring up some of the numbers here. But while I do that, JT, you see this Winnebago team on tape all year on video, and they've been very, very impressive.
Yeah, they've been dominant. Both sides of the football. Their defense. I don't think their defense has given up more than 14 points in the game all season long. And also, offensively, where they're able to control the clock. They have a great running game. They kind of run a double wing offense.
They're a power running team, a typical Midwest Conference team.
Yeah, and they have a little bit of ability to throw the ball, but in the playoffs they have really focused more on running the ball heavy, not throwing all that often. Last week they were able to grind out, I think, a 28-14 win over Pioneer. Maybe a Pioneer team that's not quite as good as they've been in the last few years, but they definitely improved over the season. That was not an easy win for the Warriors on the road, but I love their tailback Tyler Katchke. He's kind of a mix, almost like a Tyler Berkey type of runner, but he's pretty elusive as well. And I tell you what, this Winnebago team, they have been on a roll, Bob, and undefeated season after what they were able to do last year, upsetting West Central in the sectional. They've fought off all comers this season, and they've won every game by at least 14 points.
So looking at some of the numbers, Tri-Central, they are from Sharpsville, around the Kokomo area, and of course that area you're going to be playing for purpose and pride with the storms and the tornadoes that happen around that area this past weekend. Tri-Central, 275 yards per game on the ground, 102 through the air. They have a junior quarterback, Howell. He's only averaging about 10 pass attempts a game, but 73 completions, 20 touchdown passes on the season, only 4 interceptions, and they have a senior running back, Kelly, 1,600 plus yards, 19 touchdowns. Howell's also ran for 400 yards and 8 scores on the season. And their leading receiver is a senior named Pickett. 25 catches, 15 yards a catch, but 9 total touchdowns on the season. So Tri-Central, a little bit, they run the ball, but they could be dangerous enough to sneak a pass in here and there.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's the one weakness in Winnemax, and their defense would be their pass coverage in their secondary. Whiting was able to have some success throwing the football. Very few teams that they have played this year, really air the ball out, but the few teams that they have, even Lake Station was able to throw the ball a little bit on them. And so I think if there's any weakness that Tri-Central should try to exploit, it's going to be Winnemax secondary. If they can get some big plays down the field in the passing game, that's going to be their best method of moving the football, I think. But I think if you're Winnemac, I think you got to look to try to take away, focus on stopping the run, and kind of dare Tri-Central to try to throw the football. I think it's going to be a great game. But I think, as we're going to point out in some of these other semi-states, I think the home field makes a big difference, especially at this level. We're talking about some long road trips. The team that gets to stay home and not go on that long bus ride has a huge advantage. And I think with how dominant Winnemac has been at home, they played the last 2 weeks on the road. I like Winnemac to win a close one at home. I'm looking at maybe a 24-14 kind of game.
Tri-Central has, never been at this level before. It's been a long time for Winnemac. You got 2 veteran head coaches. I just look, Tri-Central has that loss to Eastern Hancock, but still, outside of that, not the best schedule in the world. Winnemac, the Midwest Conference, traditionally pretty good small school conference. They've taken care of business, and I think for Winnemac, the one team that probably gave them fits that they played so far, and they did a pretty decent job of containing that passing attack, was against Whiting a couple of weeks ago, where Whiting was able to move the ball, but they really didn't have the ball enough, and Winnemac just kept playing cake away from it. I don't think they even attempted a pass in that game as well. I can see that happening again. Winnemac's been running on teams all year long, and don't underestimate how important that is, especially at the 1A level. I look for Winnemac, more of the same. It's not going to be blowout city. I don't think it's going to be a close game either, but I'm going to say Winnemac wins this game pretty comfortably. I'm going to say Winnemac 32-14 at home to punch their first ever ticket to the state finals.
All right, so we agree on that one.
All right, down south should be a great matchup of undefeated teams. Linden Stockton making a big trek up to the northeast part of, east part of the Indianapolis metropolitan area to take on Eastern Hancock. Eastern Hancock trying to make their second ever trip to the state finals. They won the 1A championship way back in 1985. Linden Stockton, wow. JT, this is the same story we've seen again. They are back
third
in the
consecutive year.
I think I want to say it's their 6th or 7th trip to the semi-state. They have yet to break down the state title door. Can they do it this year on the road?
I can see that door. I can see the hinges just with the bolts just rattling wow. Right now as I'm pushing on that door, and I'm telling you right now, this Friday night, they are going to break the doors down. Stockton, I think this season, not having to worry about playing Cecina anymore. Cecina's been their roadblock the last couple of years.
Do you realize Eastern Hancock in 13 games has scored 747 points?
That's a lot of points.
You think so? Let's take a look at some of the numbers on the Royals of Eastern Hancock. Yes, they are the Royals. 347 yards per game on the ground, 123 through the air, so they are averaging 470 yards per game. They have scored 104 touchdowns on the season. They've had 3 different quarterbacks during the season. Splater, their junior, has gotten the bulk of the action. Throw for 1,000 yards and 18-5 touchdown to interception ratio. And the senior running back, Gilbert, 235 attempts, 2,629 yards. He's averaging 11.2 yards a carry, 36 touchdowns on the season. He's very realistically within striking distance of 3,000 rushing yards on the season. That's a lot of yards.
Yeah, that's
Very rarefied air.
Yeah, it is. It is. This isn't an easy matchup to pick because I know Eastern Hancock's undefeated. I know they've had a great season.
They got a win over Tri-Central.
Yeah, the win over Tri-Central is big. But I think Lytton Stockton has been so close the last couple of years, and now not having to play Cecina, I think they're gonna play an inspired game on the road. I think it's gonna be a very close game, and I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go 31-28. I'm gonna say Lytton Stockton by a hair.
By the way, Lytton Stockton, no slouches themselves, 86 total touchdowns on the season.
Yeah, I know they're putting up a lot of points in bunches.
273 yards per game on the ground, 156 through the air. They have a first-year coach in Brian Oliver. They've had kind of a two-quarterback system, whether injury or whatnot. Eden, the senior, has thrown for 800 yards, 12 touchdowns. Rupska, the other senior, 1,200 yards, 16 total touchdowns. Despite the fact that they average that yardage a game, they do not have a 1,000-yard rusher on their team, believe it or not. Hale Jr. is their leading rusher with 883 yards and 12 touchdowns, and they have another running back, Hayden, 712 yards, and a third one, Eberhardt, 729 yards. So good balance offensively for the Miners, taking on a very dynamic. If you love offense, head to the east part of Indianapolis.
You've been there?
Where, Eastern Hancock?
Yeah.
I have been there. Yes, I have been there. Not to do a game, but I've been there. But I'm just looking to see Charlottesville, Indiana. That's where the home of the Royals is. I think this is going to be a heck of a matchup. If you love offense, definitely this is going to be the game. And for some reason, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think Lytton Stockton finally gets it. The schools don't really play the best of schedules. Mm-hmm. The respective conferences are not the best gauge of competition, but you look at, I just think Lytton is a little bit more rounded, and also that been there, the frustration of years past, I think they're going to finally culminate and get their first ever appearance in the state finals. I think it's going to be a wild score. I'm going to say Lytton 42-35 over Eastern Hancock Friday night.
That sounds like a wild game.
All right, moving on to Class 2A. We have Northwest Indiana representation in this one, as it will be the Rensselaer Bombers taking on the Tipton Blue Devils. Tipton, who just waxed Oak Hill last week, 56-2. Of course, we do know that there will be a Hoosier Conference team in the state finals. Both of these teams are in the same conference. At least one. Rensselaer won the first matchup. I believe that game was at Rensselaer. Where they withstood a last-second field goal attempt by Tipton. Rensselaer won this one 9-7, but the big difference this time for Tipton, they have a serving quarterback who's back now for the Blue Devils, as the Blue Devils have outscored their opponents this year 403-188. They've won 7 in a row. They knocked off Lafayette Central Catholic. For Tipton, 236 yards per game on the ground. They're averaging 130 yards through the air. And I think the young man you're talking about for passing, is that Mr. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Hooker's back. 13 touchdowns. He's completing passes at a 58% clip. And, of course, Mr. Heimler, senior, standout running back, 9 touchdowns, 1,400 yards, rushing for head coach Aaron Toll.
Yeah, this obviously you mentioned it's a rematch from a few weeks earlier, and when Rensselaer won that game earlier in the season, Hooker was not there. He was injured. He was out for a few weeks, and I didn't know it until a couple weeks ago. I didn't know that he had come back. I thought he was done for.
He came back against Lafayette Central Catholic, didn't he?
Probably, and that's why I think made the big difference in winning that game, having him on the field. It's like if you took the Somer off of Andrean's roster and you went to go play a game. Obviously, Andrean's going to be 10 times better with him on the field than without him. And the same goes with Tipton. Hooker is so important to what they do. He can run the read option. He's a bigger kid. He's kind of a kid that can run over people, almost like a Tebow-esque type of runner at quarterback. So he's a very dynamic player. And that's what makes this Tipton team go. And I'll tell you what, breaking a barrier, beating Lafayette Central Catholic in the playoffs, that was huge for them. And now not having to worry about playing Bishop Luers, that's been their big roadblock, as it has been for Rensselaer as well.
Well, there's two big things for Rensselaer this year. Defense, and by the way, do you realize in 13 games this year, Rensselaer has 43 and a half sacks as a team this year? They get after the quarterback pretty good.
I know they have like 10 or 11 defensive touchdowns. I know.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it offensively, not the best stats. They only are averaging 200 yards per game on the ground, 90 yards passing per game. So they're averaging less than 300 yards per game, which is kind of unusual for teams that get to this stage of the season.
Yeah, and that says a lot about their defense and the fact that they can score more than, like I said, they've scored a number of touchdowns on defense this year. And I'm sure they probably get a lot of short fields, maybe with their, kicking game, the return game, and whatnot. But this is going to be their toughest challenge of the season, because I think playing Tipton with Austin Hooker is going to be just a completely new challenge for them. And I kind of fell into this trap a couple years ago, when they had that great year in 2010. They went undefeated, and I think I predicted them to beat Bishop Loers, and that was not a very good pick at all.
Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy, but I was crazy. I learned my lesson, and I realized this would be a pretty big upset if Rensselaer wins this game. And
I mean, their defense should keep them in the game.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced that their offense can put up enough numbers, because I don't think they can hold down Tipton's offense for 4 quarters. I think Tipton's going to break through and put up some points. I'm just not confident that Rensselaer can consistently drive the football down the field. And with this game being at Tipton, for anyone else other than Bishop Loers, it's almost impossible to win there.
That is a great game day atmosphere. It's been about 20 years since I've been there doing a game at Tipton, but that is a incredible game night atmosphere there.
But I'll tell you what, given the circumstances, given the fact that Tipton does have their quarterback back, given that it's at Tipton, it's a rematch from a game that happened a few weeks ago, I got no choice. I got to go with the Blue Devils, Bob, and I have to do it. I'm putting the cheese on it.
And
Cheesehead lock.
And you have been barred by Chris Meeks from any further Rensselaer games.
Know what?
I'm
going to lose some friends over that one.
I think Rensselaer's defense is going to keep them in the game, but with Hooker back at quarterback, and they didn't play the first time, and Rensselaer's defense was quite admirable, holding Tipton to a touchdown the first time around, but they only scored 9 points, and moving the ball the whole year has been kind of an issue at times. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where very conservative. So let's run the ball. Let's not make mistakes. You realize Rensselaer's only got 9 turnovers the entire season, so they've done a great job of taking care of the pigskin. But I think Hooker is going to be the X factor here. He's going to be the difference maker. I think it's going to be a close game, but I see Tipton ending the Bombers' dreams again in the semi-state. I see this being a 16-7 type game. I like Tipton at home to go to the state finals for the first time since 1994.
All right.
All right, let's move down to class, the bottom part of 2A. Just very quickly looking at that matchup there. Down south you have Paoli taking on Indianapolis Ritter. Paoli knocking off Southridge, who knocked out Modern Day. Ritter with a big win last week. Both teams 11-2. Ritter, much tougher competition. Yeah. Paoli here in the semi-state, I think it's their second trip in the last 3 or 4 years. Ritter, with Mr. Parika at quarterback, will roll on Friday night.
I think you're right. They're going to roll over the Rams. They're going to butt heads, and the Rams are going down.
All right, so it could be we're looking at Ritter versus Tipton.
Yeah, gosh, that was my original. When we started the season, that was my original matchup that I had for 2A, and then I changed it.
All right, Class 3A, 5959 Broadway in Maryville will host the semi-state championship game for the second straight year. This time in Class 3A, as the West Lafayette Red Devils take the trek up I-65 to take on the Grade 59ers. And I didn't hear it at the time because there were about 50 people in the press box in East Chicago, but the loud gasp you heard around 8 o'clock last Friday night across Northwest Indiana was Niner Nation holding their breath when Matt DeSommer got banged up and left the field at halftime on a cart. He did finish the game. The only 2 running plays he had in the second half last week were the 2 kneel downs at the end of the game as Andrean took care of Jimtown 27-7.
Yeah, that was the big headline from that game. Obviously, Andrean able to move on, but the status of DeSomer moving forward, that's going to be the whole enchilada right there. That's the X factor. I mean, if he's not healthy, that changes this game completely because it really limits what Andrean can do offensively. And he's pretty much going to be a sitting duck back there in the pocket if he has no mobility. So it's going to be really, really tough, I think, for Andrean to move the ball and put up points if he's not mobile. So.
Well, you look at there's a couple of great playmakers that they're going to be going up against here for West Lafayette, led by their senior running back Woodard, 2,200 yards, 34 touchdowns on the season. He's put 346 rushing attempts, so very kind of uncharacteristic out of a spread pistol attack that you see that many carries. And they also have a quarterback who can take care of the ball in Roncheto, the senior, has a 30-3 touchdown to interception ratio. He is completing passes at a 67% clip. He's thrown for 2,400 yards on the season. And you look at that 2,400 yards, their leading receiver only has 671 yards on the season. So he spreads the ball around. They have 3 different receivers with at least 6 receiving touchdowns on the season. It could be a defensive nightmare for that Andrean staff. But if there's one defense in Northwest Indiana that could contain that multiple option spread attack of West Lafayette, it could be Andrean.
Yeah, this is going to be probably their toughest challenge that they've had since week 2 when they played Maryville.
I'll be honest with you, JT. This is, in my opinion, the de facto 3A state championship game right here.
Well, it might be. I mean, I'm impressed with West Lafayette. You mentioned. I mean, with the style of offense that they run, they do a lot of no huddle. And, yeah, they do spread it out a lot. And the tailback, I remember seeing his brother play a few years ago, and his brother was unbelievable. So,
and out-of-state championship team, too.
Yeah, so I could only imagine, how good this his younger brother Woodard is. So Andrean's definitely going to have their hands full. And I'm definitely not going to say I think Andrean's going to shut this team down because I don't think it's going to be difficult. But I will say this. Rensselaer had a chance to beat West Lafayette. They lost to West Lafayette by 6. West Lafayette also lost to Lafayette Central Catholic. And so there have been a few teams that have been able to at least slow down their offense and hold them to around 20 points. And do I think Andrean's capable of doing that? I think it's possible. I think they, maybe 3 touchdowns. And so now the question becomes, do I think Andrean can score more than 3 touchdowns in this game? And the answer to that lies in what is the status of Matt DeSomer? What is he going to be fully mobile? Is he going to be able to run the read option on Friday? That's really going to be the answer to all of our questions, because if he can't do that, if he's really immobile and unable to do certain things, I don't think Andrean can win this game. But start of the season, I said I thought Andrean would run the table and go undefeated. I think if he's healthy, Andrean will find a way to win a close game being at home. Because I do think they have so many weapons themselves. Berg, Johnson, Chandler, along with DeSomer. I mean, they've got multiple threats as well. It's not just a one-man show, but he has to be healthy to get these guys the football. I'm gonna bang my buck that he is healthy enough to do what he needs to do, because he's a gamer. Obviously he came back. You see a player get carted off the field, you're pretty much not expecting to see them back in the game. So he's a gamer, and if there's any way he can be on that field to play, he will do it, and I expect him to do it. And I'm going to say that he is going to gut this thing out and will this Andrean team to a victory.
Andrean so far in the tournament has played Knox, Calumet, Glenn, and Jimtown, and I think only Glenn at the time was barely above 500. Jimtown wasn't a typical Jimtown team, but now you look at, contrast that with who West Lafayette's played in the tournament. Delta, not the best Delta team, but they were 6-3. Western, who was 9-1. Yorktown, who was 10-1, and last week Concordia, who was 9-3, and had a quarterback who's going to Ball State. Much tougher road for West Lafayette, and they were behind by 8 in the fourth quarter last week, kind of like what we saw in East Chicago, and they came back to win that game as well. I just think even if you have a healthy Mathis Sober, this is going to be a very, very tough task. I just think the tougher schedule has made West Lafayette much more battle tested, and I think, and I hate to say this, but I think West Lafayette's going to break the hearts of Niner Nation on Friday night. Should be a heck of a game, but I'm going to say West Lafayette wins this one on the road, 28-21.
Hey, that could have. I mean, it wouldn't completely shock me if it happened because I know West. I'm not saying West Lafayette is not a formidable team. I know that they're legitimate, but I know if Andrain's playing their best ball, that they're good enough, they're talented enough to win this game and win the state championships. I think the health of DeSomer is going to make a big difference. And I'll tell you, if he's not healthy, they won't win the game. But I think it's going to be a great game either way.
All right, down south, Brebeuf Jesuit and Gibson Southern. There will be a first-time state finalist for the southern half of Class 3. Mick Resser, in his first year at the helm of the Braves, has taken them further than they have ever gone before. The former Cathedral defensive coordinator has guided the Braves to their first ever sectional and regional championship. And, of course, really, he got the year started on the right foot with that big win over Chittard. I think Andy said on the show it was their first win over Chittard since the 70s. So, but you look at it, Brebeuf averaging 246 yards per game on the ground, 142 yards per game through the air. So a little bit of a balanced attack there for the Braves. Gibson Southern's back in the semi-state for the second straight year. Last year, they ran into Chittard. By the way, this is the only Saturday game of the 10 this weekend. They're going to be playing...
So you'll be traveling down there for that?
No, I won't. They are going to be playing, I believe, Saturday afternoon around 4 o'clock. Gibson Southern has scored 590 points. They knocked out Browstown Central last week in the regional round down in beautiful Fort Branch, Indiana. Balanced attack, 235 yards per game on the ground, 213 through the air. So a very balanced attack for the Titans. Gibson Southern led by sophomore quarterback Sellers. He's thrown for 2,700 yards and a 31-5 touchdown and interception ratio.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup, and Brebeuf kind of an uncharted territory here, but of course a lot of that has to do with being in the same sectional with Chittard all those years. So now with Chittard up in 4A, they're finally able to break out and see what they can do against other competition, and I think they've had a real nice season. I think if we're talking about who's played the better schedule, I think it's got to go to Brebeuf. And having that win over Chittard, I think trumps anything that Gibson Southern has done.
Do you think experience is a factor? Second year in a row here for Gibson Southern? That's got to be a little bit of a factor, I would think.
I think it's going to help them. I mean, the fact that that they made this journey through the playoffs last year, it's going to have some effect. But I also think that Brebeuf's going to be ready for anything that's thrown at them because they've played some top-notch competition, and they were my pick when we started the playoffs. I picked them to get the state along with Andrain, and I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna stick with Brebeuf, and with them playing at home, that's gonna help as well. Saturday game, it's weird playing on a Saturday. You kind of don't know what you're gonna get sometimes because it's a change in schedule. It's kind of breaking a routine. But I think it's going to have a more damaging effect on the road team than it will on the home team. And I like Brebeuf to get this one done and push their ticket.
I'm going to say Brebeuf 33-21 will be my pick, Brebeuf.
Okay.
All right, Class 4A. The East Chicago Central Cardinals head to Zonder Stadium on Friday to take on 10-3 Fort Wayne Dwenger. Uncharted territory for East Chicago. Dwenger's here for the first time since 2010. Dwenger has lost 3 games on the season. One of them was lost to Cathedral, 47-30. They also had a 45-6 loss to a mediocre Wayne team. To me, JT, that is a huge red flag to me. I know it's Dwenger, but it's not a typical Dwenger team. Now, they had a big win last week over New Haven. They took care of business. Power running team, they'll take the occasional chances through the air and whatnot, but I think, I'll be honest with you, I like East Chicago's chances in this one on the road.
What I will agree with you on is this isn't a typical Dwenger team. I think they're I think they have a better roster than they've had the last couple of years. I did see them play 2 years ago, and from what I've seen on tape, I think they have a little bit better roster. They're a solid team, but they don't have those Division One, game.
There's no Ramon Wright or John Goodman on this team.
Yeah, or Tyler Eifert. They don't have any of those big time stud athletes that they've had in the past. But I mean, they're an all around solid team, and so.
They lost 3 games in a row during the course of the season. They lost to Wayne, 45-6, Cathedral 47-30, and they lost to Snyder, 38-35. They also have an overtime win over Cincinnati and LaSalle, and there you go.
Yeah, so they've had an interesting, run through the tournament. Obviously, that win over New Haven, probably their best victory of the playoffs so far. Just like you look in previous years, think about the times when they played Lowell. The 2 years they lost, the game was at Lowell. The year they won, they had the home field.
They also won at Morden, too.
Yeah.
And they also lost at home one time in the semi-state to Concord. That was when they had Bobby Sierra and Mike Mead and company, if you remember that great Concord team from about, 7 years ago.
2006?
Yeah, with that team that lost to Cathedral.
Yeah, okay. I watched that game. I remember what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I know East Chicago definitely has the talent to win this game. I'm not going to say they don't have the talent, that they're not capable of getting this done. But now it comes down to, I think they've reached all their goals that they had when the season started. How hungry are the players going to be to go out and make this happen? Bishop Dwenger, year in and year out, has kind of that state championship mentality. They want to get to state, and they've kind of, that's kind of like an inbred goal that they have every single year. With East Chicago not having been there before, this game being on the road at Dwenger, I think this is going to be really a lot more difficult for East Chicago. This game's going to be played on grass. They're not playing on a turf field. That's going to hurt them as well. I just think Bishop Dwenger playing at home, I know they're not the best team they've been, in some of their other championship years, but I think I'm going to give them the edge at home. I think East Chicago is going to put up a good showing, but I got to go with the Saints at home. I'm going to go like 35 to 32, Bishop Dwenger in a wild one.
It's unique when you go, as a member of the media, when you go to do games at East Chicago, you actually go, the way to get to the press box, you actually have to go through the East Chicago locker room. And I just remember talking to a couple of the assistant coaches. They say this has been the loosest football team they have ever coached. Nothing doesn't seem to faze them. And you combine that with a team that has nothing to lose, and JT, you play this game, that is the most dangerous type of team you can play. A team that plays loose, plays with confidence, with nothing to lose. That is a dangerous, dangerous recipe for opposing teams. You know that, and you see that over the years.
Yeah.
I just think East Chicago has the better talent on their side of the field with Martavius Carter, Traquan Burnett, and again, Patrick Shaw, and again, it's going to come down to the play of quarterback Carlos Fernandez. He played a whale of a game last week, and East Chicago, really, outside of a few penalties, played nearly an error-free game. They did not turn the ball over at all last week. Obviously, the kicking game was a little bit of concern, but they made the extra points when they counted. This is going to be a pretty good game, and in my power play of the week,
Power play?
the Poto power play of the week, the East Chicago Sentinel Cardinals will be dancing their way to Lucas Oil Stadium after Friday night. I like East Chicago to win this one 34-28 on the road.
You're taking the Cardinals.
I am taking the Cardinals.
Power play.
It's the power play of the week.
We better hope you score on this power play.
Yeah, because apparently the Blackhawks haven't been doing that on the power play lately. So, yeah, no, seriously, I just think, Fort Wayne football traditionally has been rock solid, but even by their standards, it's been a down year in Northeast Indiana for the most part. It really has been.
Well, I think, you look at Snyder, they got handled last week by Westfield, and, obviously Bishop Luers was 0-9 in the regular season. And, Concordia put up a good fight against West Lafayette, but they weren't able to pull through either. So, Yeah, if Bishop Dwenger loses, there's not going to be any Northeast Indiana representation in the state finals.
It's been a while since you could say that there, I'll tell
Yeah.
you that. Down south, the battle of 13-0 teams. New Palestine, who knocked out Chatard last week, taking on Columbus East. Columbus East has been there before. This time there's no Ron Cali or Cathedral in their way. New Palestine, however, stingy defense led by, I think, first-year head coach possibly. I have to double-check that. But the Dragons slayed the 800-pound gorilla known as Bishop Chatard last week. One of the rare times Chatard has lost in the regional round.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. It's been a few years since that's happened, and I know a lot of people have been talking about that team, and they thought they could be kind of a sleeper in this tournament, and I kind of thought the old powerhouse of Chatard would be able to get by them and fight their way to another state championship, and it didn't happen. And then Columbus East, what they beat Jasper last week?
42-0.
Ouch!
Yeah.
That's I've been down. I'll tell you this. I've been down there for a game at Columbus East. I was down there in 2008 when they played Cathedral in the semi-state there. One of their big issues is they play a real soft schedule, but all they do, they rarely ever run the football. I mean, they spread it out 4 or 5 wide every single play. Every play's a pass, and their big issue when they get into the postseason, once they face good teams that have strong secondaries, their offense basically folds. And now, looking at this game they play against New Palestine, I think their defense is going to step up and play a lot better. I know Columbus East has made some decent playoff runs, but through the regular season they get very little resistance. I mean, their conference is not very strong at all, and they routinely put up 50 and 60 points in a lot of their games.
And you can do that against Bedford North Hornets and Jeffersonville Alliance.
It gets when they get in the playoffs and face teams with much tougher defenses, they really struggle offensively to move the ball because they're so one-dimensional. And I think the same thing's going to happen here. I know they've made a good run here, but I think this New Palestine team's for real. And I think looking forward, I think I got to consider them to be a slight favorite, with the 4 teams remaining. I think they got to be a slight favorite to win it all, and I'm gonna go ahead and take them. I'm gonna take New Palestine to win.
Yeah, I'm gonna say New Pal. We're gonna win about 28-20 here. By the way, for the Dragons, it would be their first trip to the state finals since 1990, when they played Dwenger that year and got royally thumped that year by Chris Diddle and the Saints, 56-14 that year.
Wow.
So there could be a potentiality of a rematch here. It ain't happening though. Go Cardinals right here. Boom. See, that's what I'm telling you right there. I am. Go Cardinals. I'm on the bandwagon. All right.
Man, you slapped that thing down pretty hard.
Yeah, at least I didn't knock over a can of Coke this time. Class 5A up north, 10-2 Concord is at 11-1 Westfield. Shamrocks went up to Fort Wayne last night, and they rocked Snyder out of the play. I think they pitched a shutout last week.
I think that was a touchdown. Snyder got a touchdown.
Oh,
give him credit for that.
As did Bishop Walker, who scored very late, but Concord got the revenge from last year's semi-state. So 10-2 Concord taking out 11-1 Westfield. Hoosier Crossroads Conference is a pretty doggone good conference. So is the Northern Lakes Conference, but Westfield in that central Indiana area, Concord, I think, is going to have their hands full. I like the Shamrocks to make a state finals trip. It would be their first since 1992.
Well, Bob, I think you said it all. I have to completely agree with you. I think the Shamrocks win this one big. I don't think Concord is quite what they were a few years ago. They've had a nice run here, but I just don't think the competition they played is quite up to par with what Westfield has had to play all season. I know how difficult that conference is that they play, and it really helped them prepare for this. So I'm taking Westfield as well.
And the final matchup, the 8-5 Cathedral Fighting Irish will be hosting 10-2 Terre Haute North, to I guess their first year out of the Metropolitan Conference and the Conference of Indiana. Just with the doctored order for the Patriots. I believe this is their second ever trip to the semi-state round. And Chris Barrett, their head coach, one of the good guys in Indiana high school football as well. Do the Patriots have anything for the Irish in a game? I believe that will be played at Arsenal Tech on Friday night.
Well, I think they got something for them, but I just don't think that it's enough. And I know they've had a great run, and I know I read a lot of the boards, and people keep talking about how they think Terre Haute North's gonna break through and win the state championship. And I'll tell you what, I've been impressed with what Cathedral's done here in the postseason. Just like last season, I think they were 4-5 heading into the tournament, and they just take care of business. I mean, they play teams that are way out of their league, and once they get into sectional play with their own class, they dominate everybody. And they just last week they did it again. And I think this game being played up in Indianapolis. I know they've played they've had several different home fields there, so it's not gonna.
Usually, it's been Tech here in the last few years when they get to this.
I know they played at University of Indianapolis, and so I mean, I don't think they have a real true home field advantage, but I do think that I think they're just the better overall talented team, and they've done this so many times. What is it? 3 straight state championships.
Yeah, they're going for 4 in a row now.
And I think
6 in the last 9 years, I think.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So I gotta be smart here, and I'm gonna stick with the Fighting Irish.
You realize that in the last 11 years, there's only been 4 teams to win 4A state championships. Of course, this year Cathedral's in 5A now, but trying to win their first 5A title. But in 4A, Cathedral has won in 4A. You had Wrightsworth a couple of times. You had the Ron County 3P. Oh, and there was a certain team called Lowell that broke through that one time too. But Class 5A, until proven otherwise, Cathedral's the team here.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one school you think about it. We've seen almost everyone else go by the wayside. All the since this success factor is come into place. Everybody else, Shatar, Lures, LCC, all these defending champions are out the door, but Cathedral, staying power, they're still there, and they still have a chance to win another state title. So,
all right, that's going to do it for the Region Sportsdesk part. Hope best of luck to our Northwest Indiana representatives left, and there you go.
Yeah, I picked against a few of them, but I mean, I want them to win, but I mean, being 100% objective here, I made my picks based on that. And so, good luck to all the teams left, and we'll see if they can prove any of us wrong. So.
All right, we'll wrap up MLB Weekly after this here on MidAmericaBroadcasting.com.